What would your ex tell me about you? That's what we're diving into today. Hello, everyone. My name is Paula, and I am the guest today on Mr. Jonathan Asley's podcast.
Wait, I thought I was the guest.
Yeah, I know. But we thought we'd do something different.
So our topic, what would your ex tell me about
What would your ex tell me about you?
You know, I don't think that's the real question. I think that what your ex would say about you isn't the question. The question is, have you done the work so the next person experiences a better version of you? That's really our conversation today. So I think when, we were watching the show The Gift on Netflix, and it was talking about how our past affects our present and our future. Yeah. And I think when we gain insights into particularly our past relationships, it better prepares ourselves and also the next person if they understand us better. Do you agree?
I do agree.
Okay.
I also think it's telltale to how we're speaking about our past relationships as well.
Oh my God, absolutely. I think we can get into some red flag areas there. But all right, so if I called your ex, what would they? Well, you have a few exes in your life, right?
I do.
What would
I'm
they
kind
say?
of a long-termer.
Okay.
What would they say about me? I would say they would say that oh boy. Okay. So I would say that the red flag would be that I wasn't all in.
Okay.
But I'd say the green flag was that I'm loving.
Oh, you are loving. There's no doubt about that. So in your case, you were married, you had 2 significant relationships, and now you have your soulmate, the love of your life, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
I'm just being silly here.
No.
Are you going to ask me the same question?
Yeah. What would your ex say about you?
By
the way, we did ask these questions when we first got together.
Yeah. I was in one of those telephone calls before we had our second date. So I was married, had 2 other significant relationships before I met Paula. I mean, I think my ex would say, I was a little bit unconscious as a husband. I don't think she'd use these words, so I'm going to put a little bit of words in her mouth.
Okay.
I think she would say I was probably selfish, which is true. She probably saw the defensive side of me, the righteous side of, well, I can be righteous, but that defensive.
You mean the right side of you?
Well,
the wanting to be
right kind of side. Okay. And because we butted heads on occasions, it came off domineering, that sort of thing. Right. So I think she'd say that. I think she'd say some good things. I know she even kind of called me once and said, well, she's in a relationship now. And she was actually complimenting me on something I did better than him when it came to.
Had she ever complimented it prior to that? Or she just what she was recognizing was a part of how I treated the relationship from a responsibility point of view. Let's leave it at that. I don't want to get into the particulars. Okay. A responsibility point of view. So what would my other 2 relationships say? I mean, one of them. That's true.
Yeah. Well, Paula happens to know my ex, Sherry, who I was in a relationship, after my divorce. I think she'd say wonderful things. Yeah. I think if she was being what she'd even warn you about me at that time, I was very much in a wounded place when I met that person. And because of being in that wounded place, I wasn't as, I don't want to use the word mature, but I was still in a hurt, victim-y kind of energy. I think she'd say that, but she would also probably tout the loving, kind part of me the way yours would.
Yeah.
And then the last significant relationship, I think she would acknowledge I was a big part of her growth in her life. I think she'd appreciate that. She'd say our differences had to do with my anxiety over travel.
Okay. All right. Well, and it sort of begs the question, what would you say about your ex too? So I think that in the dating scene, when we're having conversations with somebody and we're really trying to get to know them, it's almost like if you could, have a conversation about your exes that's not charged, that's not necessarily, victimhood or like, oh, he was such a narcissist.
Yeah.
But more like, I think it's telltale when you can even talk about your relationship you know, with them and what they meant to you. Like I have a lot of good things to say about my exes. And I think that that's telltale for the people that I might have gone on dates with to say, hey, you know, she says good things about her exes.
Yeah. Well, certainly
hear a lot of ex bashing.
Well, I think that's kind of why we're doing this topic, is because there's so much ex bashing that comes from a place of hurt, comes from a place of victim consciousness. And I want to be candid with everyone. The value of talking about your past experiences is you want to listen to both how they describe their past relationships, because you're looking, not that you want to be looking for red flags, but I'm just going to say there are some red flags when someone, you can literally hear it in their voice. You can tell they're still hurt, which means they're not over their ex on some level, or they're in victim consciousness. They're not taking ownership of what their part was in the ending of a relationship. But the other reason why we wanted to do this video is you and I have both examined our past relationships to look at our patterns and how that might affect us even in this relationship.
Totally. And you know, recently in the last few days, we were having a very strong conversation about that on my end.
Yeah.
That, you know, there was an aha moment around me being, you know, possibly avoidant.
Wait a minute. Wait, you took ownership of that?
A little bit.
Well, okay.
I would define it a little bit more, because I was loving and I certainly was emotionally available, but I wasn't all in.
Yes. And folks, we recently had a deeper dive conversation about this, not because we were analyzing our past or anything like that. We were actually looking at it as a growth opportunity for our, you know, where we're at today on our own spiritual, personal development, self-help journey. And when Paula described it to me, I'm like, well, you realize you were a little bit avoidant.
Yeah.
And I think where the mix-up is, okay, so this is really important what we discussed, because Paula was verbally expressive in her relationship. And I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. I'm sharing what we discussed. You were verbally expressive in your relationship. But the avoidant piece was she was avoiding all in, like fully surrendering to commitment. She was in a monogamous, exclusive relationship, but it's that energy of all in. And that's what I think when we talk about avoidance, for example, what they're really avoiding is the full commitment, where the anxious person like me is like, I fully committed, almost from a desperate, needy
which makes
place.
them look like anxious avoidant. Yeah.
Or anxious.
So, you know, it does beg the question on who you're in relationship with, but also, you know, because I don't think an anxious person in one relationship might be as anxious in the next relationship.
Yeah.
So there's that. Same thing with the avoidant. The avoidant might be an avoidant in the previous relationship, but not so much in the next one.
It's certainly I would say, for those that study love attachment style, and if you're not familiar with two books that I pulled out, by the way, there's the book Wired for Love by Dr. Stan Tatkin and the book Attached by Amir Levine and Rachel Heller. All the books I recommend are listed below, and Jonathan recommend books. But understanding attachment style gives you clues into how someone is going to be in a new relationship. So if you're in the beginning stages of getting to know someone, even if you're in a seasoned relationship, and you want to understand the patterns of disconnect from a loving place, I think by examining our past, it gives us clues as to where we're at today, and both from a self-examined point of view, but also
understanding your patterns from a self-examined
point of view. Exactly.
Yeah.
So there's four primary stories I hear from people when they talk about their past relationships. And we kind of touched upon it, but I would like to unpack this with you.
Okay.
There's the hurt story.
Okay, I've heard a lot of that.
Okay, there's the appreciation story.
Okay, good.
There is the victim story.
Okay.
And then there's the growth story.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I mean, by the way, I'm not saying this is in any books or anything like that. This is just
conversation about your exes. It's not in every conversation about your exes, the growth story, the victim story.
No, I'm saying someone, like when you're talking to someone new, you'll either hear a hurt story, you might hear a growth story, you might hear a victim story. So let's talk about the hurt story.
Okay.
Do you remember that gentleman we were speaking to the other day?
Yeah.
And he was sharing about the ending of his relationship.
Yeah.
And did he sound hurt?
He sounded hurt.
Now, did he sound like a victim?
No.
Yeah,
no.
And why
I think he was surprised.
Yes, surprised. But you could tell, even though it'd been 8 months and he felt like he had moved on, he acted like he had moved on, but you could literally hear it.
Voice. Yeah.
I think the hurt story is talking about the pain of the ending. Like when you're still in a level of pain.
Yeah.
And so I've always said that relationship readiness is when your desire, your capacity, and your vision exceeds your pain and your past hurts. So
say that again.
Okay, when your desire, your capacity, and your vision exceed, so it's above your pain and your past hurts.
Okay.
So if your past hurts, if your pain and past hurts are
still
above, then you're not relationship ready.
Okay.
That's just an observation.
I think that's why a lot of divorced people aren't ready. Like time will heal the wound too.
No, time doesn't heal wounds.
Sometimes it doesn't. But
no, I mean, time gives you the opportunity to process and heal. But time, I don't believe time heals wounds. I know people that have been divorced for 20 years and they're still bitter, jaded, angry, hurt, felt betrayed, and they're caught. Well, certainly, I think people caught in victim story it'll remain much longer than that capacity to be ready for a relationship.
So that begs the question: how so people who are still feeling the hurt,
okay,
are they also in victim mode, or is that a completely different thing?
No, victim mode I think is they're in hurt and they're in judgment about the other person, like I was wronged.
Okay,
I mean, that's kind of the way I view it, is I'm wronged, in this scenario. So
hurt is simply, it's not necessarily wronged. They're just still smarting from the
yes, but I think, I just thought of this word wronged, like I was with a narcissist and they did this and they did this.
Yeah.
They're focused on all of the pain at a granular level. And you can just, victim consciousness, you could just almost feel it, like I did nothing wrong. It was all their fault.
Which lacks accountability and taking ownership of, whatever situation that got you there, that type of thing too. So.
Well, that's where the difference, where the appreciation story, like I look at every one of my relationships from a place of appreciation, but particularly my last relationship, I both had growth from that relationship, but I have immense appreciation as well.
Yep.
So you could be in a place of appreciation, but you didn't grow, or you could be growth. You could grow from a relationship. And do you hear what I'm saying? Story, you want to listen. So give me an example of, like, can you share with everyone what growth felt like for you?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I have to get my water while you do that.
So long-term relationship. If someone asked me about that relationship, I would immediately go to that I had a huge growth cycle with him, and that I wouldn't have traded my relationship with him for the world. And I came out of it for the better because I'm a better person for it. Like, yeah, am I a newly improved Paula for the next relationship? Absolutely, because of that one.
Yes, and I think those who can examine their past from a place of appreciation and growth is probably literally it's the what's the word I'm looking for? It's like the runway for a greater chance of relationship success. I'm thinking of a runway you take off.
Yeah, you have a longer runway. You have a longer amount on the runway.
Yeah. In other words, people that have victim consciousness or not, their runway is off of a cliff, and it's like the size. It's the size of a tiny aircraft carrier, and you don't have enough power to get it going.
Yeah.
I mean, and I believe that the value, and again, this topic is about the thumbnail on this video is about building intimacy.
Yeah.
Talking about our past is a very intimate facet of our lives.
Absolutely.
And when you can share from a genuine heart-centered place about your past.
So what do you think? I mean, I have friends who, they believe that their exes talked too much about their past relationships. From that standpoint, is that a bad thing?
Actually, I was going to bring up the opposite. So if you talk too much about your past relationships, then I would say that could be the stuck story. I didn't add this, and I just made it up. I didn't have it in our notes. But the stuck story is you're talking too much about your ex.
Yeah.
I'm in, or the opposite, the avoidance story.
Yes. Okay. I had one of those.
Yeah. So I started this conversation.
You don't want to talk anything about their ex, right?
Yeah. So there's the hurt story, appreciation story, victim story, stuck story, growth story, and avoidance story.
Okay. So the ones who don't want to talk about their exes.
Yeah.
How do you see that?
I would say that it comes from a place of avoidance. There could be a pain, most likely, or they're the type of person that says, oh, I just want to live in the moment and go forward.
Yes.
Okay. And I have a criticism about those. And typically men are the ones who avoid, they're the ones that say, I don't want to talk about the past.
Absolutely.
Okay. I think it's an avoidance story. I think it could be based on a past pain, or more importantly, they have, I'm going to use the word secrets. In other words, there's aspects of their past relationships that they don't want to reveal to anyone else.
So I don't know if I mean, I've come across this several times in the dating scene. And I think what I discovered was that many of them, it was almost like they just didn't want to go there. They didn't want to get into the deep of talking, analyzing, they consider it analysis. I consider it revealing.
Yeah.
So, and of course I'm a curious soul. So of course I want to ask those questions, but even I've had a long-term relationship where he didn't really want to talk much about his exes. And the reveal part to me is how you dive in deeper and grow your relationship together, knowing what those patterns were in the past and how, right? So when they don't talk about it, I think that that's a defensive posture. So
I said that we began our relationship was, how did we get here? Where are we? Where do we want to go? And the how do we get here? How did we get to where we're at is a reflection of our past. Mm-hmm. Now, I think we spend far less time now talking about our past. We spend now more time about our present, where we want to go. But occasionally touching upon the past is just a reflective point of view. Right. Might be looking at, well, my pattern, like when we did this the other day,
right.
It was more out of the blue. We had this conversation about Paula might have been avoidant in her past relationships. I think avoiding those conversations is like, in other words, if someone wants to ask some questions about your past and they don't reveal it, then you're having to assess who this person is on face value going forward,
which then requires some assumptions and is there a too much? Is there a not enough? There is no rule or rule of thumb at all, but I do believe that look, we're in midlife and beyond at this point, right? Most of us talking here, and I think that the reality for me is that you don't get there without. Sorry, I got something in my eye. You don't get there without having a experience or two with past relationships, right? And so it is how we've made up, and to not even talk about that is a whole it's a whole thing.
You know, as you're sharing this, I'm thinking about when my professional life before I did what I'm doing now. I was in the insurance business, and I worked with 3 firms. Each firm was preparing me for the next firm.
Okay.
You know, in other words, what I learned at that one firm was preparing me for the next one and preparing me for the next one. And not that my new firm needed to know everything, but who we are as a person is a reflection of all our past experiences.
Right.
So being avoidant of those conversations, I think is kind of a red flag from that vantage point.
Yeah, I agree.
So let me see here. I have a note here. Curious, what do you think any ex would warn me about you?
Oh, they warn you. They warn you. My ex-husband would probably say her need to be right.
Okay.
I mean, that was a few years ago, but there was some truth to that.
Okay.
You know? I had the I am right dance.
Yeah.
You know, I'd wiggle one hand and I'd wiggle the other and I'd go, I am right.
I think I
mean, we joked about it, he and I, but it was a thing.
Well, I knowing from what I know about you, it's not so much about being right. It's about exploring something. And you might have a point of view that you feel pretty strong about, but we unpack things together, you know, from a place of we want to get to truth.
Yes.
And so it's the truth that we really both are looking for.
And, you know, and there was a lot of defensive positioning, you know, in that relationship too.
So if we were speaking to my most recent ex, I think she'd warn you about, I am exhausting and I like to process. And I have a high curiosity and analytical of that.
Right. Yeah. So one man's trash is another man's trash.
I know. You know, what's interesting about that is that some people think we analyze our relationship a lot, and it's nothing. No, there's no analyzing.
We're not analyzing.
It's really self-reflection.
Curiosity.
Well, it's self-examination. What is the byproduct of having conversations about who we are? Like we spend more time in the feelings of we're not examining our relationship. We're really expressing our feelings about our relationship, particularly the feeling of gratitude. And I asked you yesterday, how often do you think we express gratitude for one another?
Easily 3 times a day.
And I was thinking more like 10 or 15 times a day. Well, partly because whenever I say I love you, I'm really saying I am so fucking grateful you're in my life.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. So is your eye okay?
You tell me.
Oh, you got a hair in there.
Is that what's going on?
It's your hair. So what about, I'm curious, someone posted a comment. What do you think about people that say I have a crazy ex?
I think a lot of that
calling their ex crazy.
Yeah. So I go down the rabbit hole with that, right? I'll go, okay, so what was crazy about them? And they'll tell a circumstance and I'll go, yeah, okay, that's kind of crazy. But then, then you hear something and you might say, well, what about that was crazy, or what happened next? And then it turns out really, okay, maybe they were triggered by something else. Like sometimes when you find out the crazy really had a reality behind it, it might be a completely different story. So
the funny thing is, if a person said my ex was crazy, it goes to what would your ex tell me about you? Coming back to this title, because I would venture to say you were the one that created the craziness.
Made them crazy too. They could have made them crazy.
But again, when you're pointing the finger at your ex, you're usually in victim, you're in stuck energy, you're in hurt energy, versus those that take ownership on their part. And really, for this conversation, and we're going to take questions in a second, I'm inviting you all to really pay attention, to ask about past relationships, but more importantly, pay attention and really ask what positive things you learned about yourself, what was good about the relationship, what was not so good about the relationship. Can
you give me an example of, like you say it was a growth relationship? Can you tell me how? Like those kind of.
I don't want to plant that word in someone.
What?
Oh, it wasn't a growth relationship.
No, I'm saying if they were to say something like that, you and I would probably ask, like, well,
how did you grow?
How did you grow?
Yeah,
like
yeah,
what, tell me about an experience, or
But
share with me.
But you're looking for the hurt story, the appreciation story, the stuck story, the growth story, the victim story, the avoidance stories. That's what I want you to think of, those 6 things. Can someone write that in the box too? Because I believe that, 3 of those stories or 4 of those stories are red flags, and 2 of those stories are green flags. Those that look at it, how did they grow, how they're appreciative, and all the other ones are red flags. And that's what I want.
A couple of comments in there, or define crazy. Love that. That's great. Yeah. And then the other one says, maybe you should follow up with, oh, I lost it. Maybe it was something like, maybe you should follow up with, why'd you stick around so long?
Yeah, why'd you stick around so long?
If they were crazy.
All right, quickly, folks, if you have a question, time for Q&A. I want you to write the word question and post the question thereafter. Or you can purchase a super sticker, super chat. There's a little $ in the chat box. All the monies from the super sticker, super chat goes to a scholarship fund in the name of my son, Connor Aslay. He's my son who passed away over 7 years ago. In his honor, we donate to causes like the Hoffman Process, Insight Institute, and scholarships to coaching as well. Our goal is $50, so we'd appreciate some love. But again, if you have a question for Paula, just simply write the word question and then post the question thereafter.
Or a question for you. Or if you'd love to come on live.
Well, I haven't, whoa, I got to do some tricky stuff.
Oh,
so if you want to come on live and join us, here's a link. And you could join us live. Let's see if it comes out. Okay. And I'd have to do some fancy footwork for that.
Okay. We already have a question.
All right. Question. What is the difference between the immature version of you and the mature version of you? I think if you're asking me that question, I think this was directed to me. So I think the immature version was always wanting to be right. The immature version was reacting with defensiveness. The immature version was attached. It was insecurely attached to somebody. And without knowing my anxious behavior, I think the immature version was my lack of self-awareness, was the immature version. What's my mature version?
Well, right there. I mean, you are probably, I give you credit for this all the time. You are aware. I use the phrase awareness is the first step on the road to recovery.
Okay.
And you not only, come in from awareness, but then you steep it in gratitude. It's like, okay, I'm aware of this. I'm working on that. You get into the growth piece of it, and then complete gratitude. So that's mature. That's pretty dang mature.
It's interesting. So the other night we watched the movie Inside Out, Disney movie, both part 1 and part 2. And the 5-6 primary emotions are joy, sadness, disgust, fear, anger, and also surprise is one of those that wasn't in the movie. And why I'm bringing this up is the reason why I actually choose to live a self-examined life is I am acutely aware when I'm in fear. I'm acutely aware when I'm in disgust. I'm aware of when I'm in sadness. I'm aware when I'm in joy. And when I'm in the feeling of sadness or anger or disgust, I'm actually going, this isn't where I want to be.
Yeah.
So when I feel those feelings, I go, okay, how did I get here? How to get here? Where am I right now? And where do I want to go? Coming back to how did I get here? Where am I? Where do I want to go? I think we can use that in all facets of life. And sometimes it might be a feeling of my past. Might be a past relationship that's caused, like, in other words, a trigger from my past, oftentimes my childhood. And by the way, if you're not familiar with the book, the Hoffman process. The Hoffman process, again, all the books I recommend. I invite you to read this because this really gives insight into how our childhood experiences actually, create our negative patterns, our limiting beliefs in our lives. So when we do this examination, so the fact,
and our triggers.
Yeah. And so and I go through this examination for myself. I'm always wanting to come back to love, coming back to gratitude. So anyways, to answer the question about mature and immature, I think it's the difference between self-awareness, which is mature is aware of your negative patterns, your limiting beliefs, your fears, your insecurities, your doubts, your judgments of others, how our actions affect other people, and how we have the power internally to really direct our lives. And to me, that's what the mature person does versus the immature person. They're usually in hurt or victimhood.
Yeah.
Okay.
That'd be.
All right. We got another one here. You want to read that?
What advice would your future self give your present self? Ooh, that's a good one.
Buy Apple stock. Buy Apple stock. That's
what a little Back to the Future there.
Yeah.
What would my future self tell? Wait, what's the question again?
Oh.
What would my
future self
advice?
If you went back and that's okay. What would my future self?
To my present self? It's almost, I don't know my future self yet.
You made it to 85 years old.
Yeah. You know what? I would say.
And you were healthy a lot.
I would say, and this is something you teach, and I hear a lot from you in coaching, which, I think a lot of us, and I think a lot of us are getting there in midlife and beyond, but haven't been there before, which is to really be discerning about the things that you want, about the boundaries that you have, about the I just think all of my past relationships might not have been by my choice. In other words, I was happy to be chosen. Okay. I was in it and moving along with it and thinking to myself, well, I'm loving this person and whatnot, but I was not all in, right? So why wasn't I all in? I wasn't all in because I wasn't using discernment for myself about the things that were important to me. So I would say my future self would probably tell my present self, stay present with the discernment piece.
Okay.
Discernment meaning, to me, stay present in the things that I'm aligned with, stay present in the things that I want, stay present with things that are important to me. In the dating and relating world.
Well, in everyday life.
In everyday life. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
What would my future self tell me? So one of the questions Paula brought to my awareness, or what you brought to my awareness early in our dating process, was this phrase. She would say to me, what does Paula want? And it's like, what does Jonathan want? And I think my future self would say, really examine that and make a choice on not what I want in a relationship, because I have this piece. I have the relationship I want, but there are other facets of my life where I'm like, I'm a little bit kind of gray area on what I really want, from where I want to travel, where I want to go. I'm kind of a little caught up in our love bubble a lot, and there isn't more, what do I want? And I'll be candid with everyone. I've wanted her for 40 years. We're both in our 60s. Okay. I want you to know that love actually can happen in your 60s, can happen in your 50s, it can happen in your 70s. Absolutely. You can have what you want. So I got what I wanted, but now it's not that I want for more. It's that I want to grow and expand. And my future self would say, hey, right now, really, really sit with that next phase of your life and be intentional. So for
Be
you, it's just
intentional.
yours was discernment. Mine would say be intentional about what you want.
That's kind of where I was going with it. Being discerning around the things you want, staying in that place, which is intention, really.
So that was a great question.
That was a great question.
All right, let's keep going. Wait, I saw this here. Let's do this. I see another question. It seems important each other to share hurts from past relationship with each other's needs, to know of the pain that each
has been through. How can you share without seeming to play the victim? So it's important to share the hurts that each other has been through, but how do you do it without playing the victim?
You know, you could say I was hurt in my past relationship, but I've moved on. It's when you start getting granular about the hurts, that's the victim.
Okay, but I would ask in the date, well, tell me how you felt hurt.
Oh, that's it. Oh, the difference is, okay, so now that shifts the conversation, because you're going to say how I got, you know, my husband or my partner was unfaithful. That hurt. Okay. It's when I think the victim is the tonality that you're expressing it, how your tone is. I think the victim is getting really granular, like gives every detail. Well, you know, I went out with my girlfriends one night. My husband, you know, called up a hooker, and I'm just making up shit right now, you know, and does this and this and this and this and this and this. Not only are they hurt, but they're giving you every fucking detail of it. Instead of just saying, hey, look, I was hurt. My ex was unfaithful. I'm using that as an example because that can be a legitimate hurt. And you know what? I found out, I moved on. It's your attitude towards the hurt that differentiates for it. If your attitude is like, I was victimized, then you're in victim consciousness. If your attitude was, it fucking sucked that it hurt, you know, but I've moved on from the hurt.
And then there's the other side of the equation. You know, if you're in a marriage that's, you know, the last 7 years you haven't had sex or whatever, and all of a sudden they're trying to find it somewhere else. Yeah. You know, you could take accountability for that too and go, well, you know, he wasn't getting his needs met.
Yeah. I think someone who their partner's been unfaithful and they say, you know what, I disconnected from sex. Yeah. You know, years ago, I know what he did wasn't right, but what I didn't do wasn't right either. That's taking ownership. Contributed to it. Yeah. Okay, we got more questions.
Paula, do you have children? And when you were married, were you two equally yoked? And now with Jonathan, are you on the same page with beliefs and faith?
Okay.
That's like a 3-in-1 question. Okay, yes, I have children. Can you leave this on?
Okay, well, it just covers the screen a lot.
I know, sorry. Yes, I have children. I have 2, 29 and 26, girl and a boy. And love those guys. They live close to me, although they hadn't for quite a while. So it's nice to have them around.
What about you and your partner?
Equally yoked with him. Yeah, we were pretty equally yoked. We owned some businesses together. We talked a lot. We were communicative. We believed in the same things spiritually. Yeah, I would say we were equally yoked in that way.
And what about Jonathan?
And Jonathan and I share a lot of beliefs and faith together, and most definitely we're equally yoked.
We're two peas in a pod.
We are. And the thing that's different here is talking about this weekend. It's like a knowing for me. It feels much more embodied than it ever has before. Like a much more deep in my center of my being sort of feeling.
I think, you know, it's interesting, and thank you for the question. I think one of the reasons why, at least I review my past relationships, is because this relationship feels so different. Like, and by the way, when I say so, you know, I'm not I don't mean to disrespect my past relationship, but I recognize that love for me for the first time, as Paula just said, feels embodied. It feels safe. It feels calm. It feels open. Like are unafraid to share what's in our heart. In
Yeah.
fact, my morning ritual with Paula is what's in your heart today. Like, I mean, I start with, and what do you feel conflicted with? It's kind of like two things I will go down those rabbit holes, because I want to know what's going on the inside. And I didn't have that before. So the only reason why I might even visit the past is the contrast. It's like, okay, it's like, I guess when you're decorating right now and you're annoyed with the paint color, you know, but it's because of the, you know, and I'm using that as an example, is contrast gives you some context of how to decorate, you know, is through am I even close to right? I have no effing clue about art and shit, but is the contrast?
No, but I'm trying to remember what our friend said. She called it was like paint syndrome, and that's what I'm having, irregular paint syndrome issues.
Okay. But I want to come back to
Vinegar Gate, I'm sure, over time.
Okay, but I want to get back to the contrast. And so this original conversation about our past relationships, it also, I think, allows to reflect from a place of appreciation for your current relationship.
Yeah.
Or at least that's how I operate.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, to piggyback on that, you know, it's, I couldn't have said in the previous relationships the same about the embodied feeling.
Yeah.
So it's almost like I had to know the embodied feeling in order to know that I didn't have the embodied feeling in the previous relationship.
Yeah. And we even talked about how, imagine if our relationship ended, and how we'd approach any future relationship. And coming back from a discerning point of view, it's like, look, I wouldn't even fuck around. If I see those red flags, it's like, I'm done. If I don't.
But beyond that, I would want to feel the alignment that I feel.
Exactly.
And that is the difference, I think, between how I feel with you and how I had felt in my past relationships. I have not felt the alignment.
I think, you know, who goes through this, you know, folks that have lost their partner. If they were truly deeply in love with their partner, I think people who are widows or widowers, they struggle because they can have had such an embodied sense of love that coming back into the dating marketplace, they're like, God, I don't want to deal with all this, you know, the static
noise
that's going on, the dysfunctionality.
Yeah.
And it's one of the reasons why I teach discernment, coming back to your word you use, discernment, is I teach discernment so you don't waste time on the wrong person. And by the way, for those who are interested in coaching, there's a link below. Look, I've got 2 openings this month for new clients. So there's a link below. Schedule a discovery call with me to see if working with a coach is right for you. And again, I only have 2 openings. So let's keep going here.
Can I piggyback on something?
Sure.
I'm going to toot your horn for you a little bit.
Oh, okay.
One of the things that you said to me last week really struck me, which was that a lot of people come to you and think they know what they want.
Yes.
They're absolutely certain. I know what I want in the dating pool. I got my man list and the this and the that. And then at the end of the 8 weeks, what did you tell me that they say to you?
Oh,
I would say, what the fuck they.
Yeah, it'd say, why didn't they teach me this in school? Why didn't my parents teach me this? Why didn't I learn this before I married the knucklehead?
But then they go, I didn't know. I thought I knew what I wanted, and I didn't know what I wanted because I didn't know how to discern what I wanted.
Yeah, one of the things I do in my private coaching is really get granular through a series of journaling exercises and self-reflective exercises to get to the core. And listen, no disrespect to the women, but they all operate. I know what I want. I know what I want. I know what I want. Like in this fantasy realm, in this 40,000 foot realm. And sometimes it's the tough love of like bringing you down to earth and saying, look, you want all these external superficial things, but the core you want to feel is love. Let's really examine that in a more embodied sense. So you don't have to spend it, you know, going date after date after date. My job is to whittle it down so you can say yes to the right person right away. But okay.
I thought that was interesting. Anyway.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. All right, let's keep going. Karen came back and said, how have your priorities changed in relationships?
Oh, that's a good question to piggyback right off of what you just said.
Is she asking about us?
Well, no, I think, well, maybe it might be personal, but you know, I think our priorities change every time we have a relationship. Like, you know, my ultimate man list that I made would, you know, change to either add a line or, you know, subtract a line of things that were or were not important to me.
Okay.
And, you know, truly the list would end up a mile long, you know, so, but there's a point when you have to decide what are you willing to knock off? Like, can you have everything? Sure, you know, it's possible, but what if you get 87% of it with somebody, you know?
We talk about the difference between the 87% that we genuinely appreciate and the 13% we're like, okay, so she uses vinegar to clean the kitchen. I'm like, which I can't stand. But more importantly, the 87% represents our values, our vision, our lifestyle compatibility, our emotional maturity. I feel like, coming back to the words equally yoked in that, our spirituality, our growth. We're both very individual growth, and growth as a couple is extremely important to us. So it's the through line, the through line is coming from love all the time. That's the through line. Also, the other through line is we're both radically curious people. So we spend time more in philosophy or examining the human condition, human behavior, where I think we're fascinated. So our curiosity in those realms, I think, is what really, that my priority was being with somebody who shared my passion for personal development, self-help, spiritual work, human behavior, that sort of thing, because it's where I live, not professionally, but I just think the human condition is fascinating.
Would you say you have different priorities now than you had 10 years ago?
Oh God, yeah. My priorities. Well, my priority when I was married was, be the provider, protector.
Yeah.
That's not my priority. My priority is to be a loving partner and that sort of thing.
Well, so 10 years ago, my priorities might have been to have more adventure or, travel to certain places or whatever. And that was like the uber important piece. But now it's more like having someone to, converse over coffee with about the human condition.
Yeah.
So I think they have changed.
Okay, let's keep going. Angela's back in the house.
Angela.
Is it okay to ask a man directly if he is interested in having deep conversations with you, or what you should do instead? What do you think? What do you both think?
I totally think you should ask a man if he's interested in having deep conversations. Well, I mean, first off, I'm assuming you want deep conversations, Angela, right? If you're looking for deep conversation, frankly, for me, like, that's all I want. And if somebody shows up and they're like completely surface material in the first date and talking about themselves or their work or whatever, I'm like, what time? It's 7 o'clock and I get out of here, because I can't tolerate it. For me, I'm like, I really want to be, I really want to dive in.
Yeah.
And I think you should ask.
So by the way, I see a shadow on the camera.
I know.
So sorry about that. So just lean in a little. Okay. So I think if you ask someone, would you like to have deep conversation, you better know what that represents. What does deep represent? Somebody deep could be talking about F1.
Well, that's true.
Are we talking about emotions? Are we talking
about? It's like asking the questions. What would your ex tell me about you?
Yeah.
Okay, tell me deeper about that. Yeah. What's important about that to you? Like,
I don't think really you should lead with, would you be open to talking about deep questions? I don't think you need to say those words. Right. You just go deep and see how they respond. Like, I don't believe it's necessary to preface it. I mean, you could say, hey, you could say, is it okay if we ask each other some serious questions just to see if we're a fit for one another? I think you could go
Or you
down
could just
the word
ask.
serious.
I never ask to ask. I always just ask.
Yeah. Okay.
And, you know, and much of the time, I think men were very thankful that I asked, you know, because it got them into conversations they probably weren't having.
Yeah.
And I heard from a lot of men like, well, that was a nice, you know, that was a nice day.
Yeah, and then tell me about the guys that bailed on you after you got deep.
Well, then those were not my guys.
Yeah.
You know, the guy that ran after I pulled out the ant game. I'm like, okay, that's not my guy. You know?
Yeah. All right, let's keep going here. And we're going to wrap up soon. All right. Question: is there a danger that a new couple can overshare, overanalyze their relationship too early on, losing some of the mystery which can make a relationship exciting? I have something I want to say. You know, someone once told me that my dating profile left no mystery. And my attitude was, if fucking 4,000 characters on a screen removed all mystery of who I am, then my life is like literally can be recited in 3.5 minutes. Okay. Here's my feeling on this. It's going to take me a lifetime to get to know you. In fact, it may take several lifetimes because our spirits have, this might not be the first time we've done this before. I believe, to get to know someone, I mean, you can discover new things every fucking day. And so it is impossible to overshare. Now, what I believe is if you're in a repetitive cycle sharing something and it's just over and over and over again.
And or
okay.
One person is asking the question, the other one is only answering, but not volleying back.
Oh, I can't stand that.
So then it becomes, because, you know, the comment is made from a lot of people like, well, you know, you're interviewing me.
Yeah.
You know, almost. And it's, you know, it is kind of an interview. I mean, it is an interview, right? But
it is an interview. I don't know why is the dating process supposed to be all about attraction, entertainment, romance, and physical connection, and not about the most important facet of dating? Is a vetting process. It is your job to figure out, is this person safe enough, one, to invest your, you know, are they safe enough to invest your time, your heart, and your body? And I say the word safe enough. Can I trust this person? If you can build trust through a bunch of, you know, oh, let's just have fun dates and let's kiss each other, and if that's how you can build trust, and you don't, in my mind, you don't build trust. The only way to build trust is through curiosity.
I agree.
But I mean, and watching behavior.
Yes. So I will add to that, Michelle, that does it take the mystery out of things? No, in some ways, it's like he said, I want to know more about the way he thinks. I want to know more about the way he feels. And the more he reveals, the more the deeper down the so-called rabbit hole I go with him, and the deepening of who we are together. So I don't think it takes out the mystery. I think it deepens the core.
It builds intimacy. It builds intimacy. What is intimacy? Intimacy. You can see more. In fact,
do you really want mysterious anyway? Like, let's say you're in a relationship for 4 or 5 months. Do you want them to be a mystery to you? Like, I'm not so sure that's
I want to know I can trust this person. And the only way you can trust is more data, more data, more data, more data, more data. You know, it's interesting in the movie Inside Out. You know, the average person has something like 15,000 to 60,000 thoughts a day, or so, I don't know what the number is, but let's just say it's a ridiculously large number. Now, 80% of those thoughts are repetitive, and I think 80% of those are negative. Like, we dwell in the negative. Mostly. This is what I've been told. I could never share 15,000 thoughts, you know, with my partner. But the question is, do you enjoy sharing? Like you said, overshare. If someone enjoys sharing and someone enjoys listening, then you're in your jam.
Yeah.
Like if someone resists the share and they care less about you sharing about yourself, is that the person you want to be with? Is it mystery more important? I mean, again, these are just my rough thoughts on that.
Yeah.
Okay, let's keep going here. Okay, this is kind of a piggyback to that. Angela says, when a man doesn't ask questions about you, he's probably not interested.
Totally, I agree.
Well, men can be interested from a lust perspective.
Well, that's true.
Like I can lust for you, but I may not be interested.
So would you be asking questions?
No, I'd be trying to get into her pants. So I think.
Would you be asking questions just to get into her pants, or would you be asking questions?
A lot of men believe if I show you how wonderful I am, you'll have sex with me. So I'll give you my resume of what do I do for a living and the fancy, like they talk about themselves. Yes. Now, some men talk about themselves because they're nervous, okay? And they don't ask questions because they're nervous. Some men talk only about themselves because they're trying to prove themselves to you. They don't really have the interpersonal skills. You see this with engineer types, accountant types, people that are analytical people. They're not good at this. You and I have a sales background.
We do. And so when a man got to the point in my dating world where he wasn't asking questions and I was, I would typically say, I would, if it was a while has passed, let's say it's 20 minutes and I'm like, so what about this? And how about that? And there's nothing coming across, then I would be like, so what questions do you have for me? And then shut the heck up. So what would, but wait.
Okay,
what would happen is if I stayed silent and I didn't say anything, they'd come up with a question and it would reveal to me whether they had an interest in who I am or whether or not it's kind of like, what do you think about me?
So
me. What do you think about me?
By the way, it reminds me of the whole, enough about you, enough about me. Like, what do you think of me? Yeah. By the way, I want to apologize. I did make a critical assumption about certain professions. That's an assumption. That's a generalization on my part about engineers and stuff like that, accountants. So I just wanted to differentiate though. In sales, you are taught more interpersonal skills. Where I was going with that was in sales, you're taught interpersonal skills versus those other professions where they tend to be more analytically driven and they're not as interpersonal. That's where I meant to go with that. So I just wanted to correct myself. All right, this is going to be our last question of the evening. Okay. What's your opinion on long distance relationship? Just curious to hear your take. That's all. Congrats on your happiness.
Thank you.
What's your opinion on long distance relationships?
Well, I've never really had one, so I can't say that I can speak to it.
Okay.
I would say that they probably are really hard, and like I personally, I'm a physical touch person. So, and that not just sex and sensuality, but just like going out and holding hands or sitting on the couch, close to each other. To not have that feels very not intimate.
Yeah. So here's the thing about long distance relationship. One of the benefits of long distance is usually you spend a little bit more time on the phone, asking those probing questions, getting to know the person on a more granular level than those people that, met on a dating app today, or today met on a dating app, met in person, and then they are focused on the fun, the entertainment, the romance, that sort of thing. What's interesting about long distance, it can create an opportunity for a little bit more depth in getting to know each other. The challenge with long distance is usually if you don't have a game plan on how to shorten the distance, that can be problematic. It's the value. One of the challenges with long distance is you don't get to see them in their environment on a regular basis. You're not sharing social activities, hobbies, mutual interests in different circumstances, in different environments, to get to know the person. And oftentimes long distance relationships can be a bubble relationship, meaning you're in this bubble of fun and excitement and physical connection, and then you go back to your respective homes, and how we are at home can be quite a bit different. So, and looking at this, it's hard enough to build a relationship when you live 2 miles apart.
Yeah.
It just makes it more problematic when it's long distance. So those are just some of the things I would be leery of with long distance. Also, people can be, can be secretive. People can be disingenuous because of the distance, in other words, having multiple relationships. I mean, it's harder to create trust when there's distance. Doesn't mean long distance relationships don't work. I mean, we lived an hour apart, and that's only because of traffic. Not that that's long distance, but
45.
the proximity breeds continuity, and continuity builds trust. Proximity breeds continuity. Continuity builds trust. And that's one of the benefits of living in a relatively close environment. All right, you went first. You got to end this video now.
I do.
Yeah, end it with our.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us today, and thank you for inviting me on as guest. And
wait, I thought I was the guest today.
No, you're still the host.
Okay, I'm still the host.
You're still the host.
Okay.
Anyway, thank you for.
Do you want me to wrap this up?
Yeah, wrap it up. I don't know what to say.
All right,
I'm
folks.
just a guest.
Our conversation, what would an ex tell me about you? I hope you found value in this conversation. If you did, hey, I'd appreciate giving us a thumbs up, sharing this video. Certainly, if you want to connect with me, there's links below. Schedule a discovery call with me to see if working with a coach is right for you. Again, I have 2 openings this month, and spread the love. I mean, we're here to spread joy, to spread love. Do me a favor, share this video, spread the love, and wishing you all a super duper wonderful, fantastic evening. Be well. Bye now. Bye-bye. Bye. Bye.